For this project, I'm using a light size 3 DK yarn. I definitely recommend trying to use a soft yarn for this project. And I'm using a bigger hook size so that it's more flowy and airy. The first thing you're going to do is create chains. This part is trial and error. Just create a number of chains that you feel will lay over your shoulders nicely. For size reference, I usually wear a small or medium. Think about where you want your top to fall on your shoulders. I wanted mine to be a slightly loose fit. My total chain is 100, which when stretched out was about 28 inches. Split stitch the ends together and try it on to test the length, and then adjust accordingly. Make sure your final number is divisible by 4. After you have the length you're happy with, fold your chain in half with the tail end being in the middle. Measure in 2 inches on each side. Place stitch markers on both sides about 2 inches in. Try your piece on and see where the stitch markers fall. These 4 points will be where your shoulders are. Try to imagine a diagonal line coming out from each point that falls on the side of your shoulders. If you need to, adjust the stitch markers. Once they are in a spot that you like, you will count how many stitches are between them. That will be your shoulder number. Round up or down and make it an odd number. My shoulders are 17 stitches. Write that number down and remove the stitch markers for now. We have to do a little bit of math, but don't worry, I tried to make this as easy as possible for you. I also drew a visual, so I hope that helps. Start by writing down your total chain length, so mine is 100, and then we want to minus 4. That 4 is going to be our corners of our project. If you look at this, it's these right here, so these are our corners, so that is why we are minusing 4. So that gives me 96. From 96, we want to minus our sleeves, and you want to minus your sleeves twice. So I will be subtracting 17 twice. That gives me 62. Then we're going to divide 62 in half, and that gives me 31. The last number that we got here, this for me, the 31, this is the size of my front and back panels. So that is this length here and here. This is my sleeves. And then here are our corners. So that number is going to be your front panel. Now in the back, we are going to be starting our project halfway in the back. It's not an even number, which is good. That's what we want. We want to have an uneven number back here. On the end where your tail is, the bottom of your chain, that side you want to be one higher than this side over here, the top of your chain. So that is all you have to do to figure out the math for your piece. So I really hope breaking it down like this was helpful for you. By the way, if you are a beginner, when we go to work in the round of this chain, it might be really helpful for you to mark your last stitch that you made and your very first stitch, just so you know exactly where those stitches are and you don't get confused by the slit stitch that we're about to make. When we're happy with the chain length, we want to make sure our chain is not tangled. So remove your slit stitch if you have it in, and we are going to start from the top of the chain here. I'm just going to make sure that all of the stitches are facing me, and I'm going to run my hand down and make sure I untwist anything. Okay, once you reach the bottom and all of the chains are facing you, I'm going to take the bottom, I'm going to bring it around to the back so that the back of both of our chains are now facing each other. And the back is where the back bumps are. The V's are the front. So with the backs of my chains facing each other, I'm going to slit stitch to the first chain. You can slit stitch to any part of the chain that you would like. It doesn't really matter. I'm personally going to be going into the back bump of my chain. So insert your hook, yarn over, and then pull through both loops. Really double check your chain and just make sure that nothing is tangled up. Trust me, I've been there. You do not want to do the whole first row and then realize your chain is twisted. So just really double check this. Now that we have our math all figured out, you want to get your stitch markers in the right spots, just like how I have mine. So you're going to take the loop here and spread it out like this. Make sure that your tail is in the middle here. So this is our front panel. These are our shoulders. This is the back panel. And these are our 4 corners that we have marked here. So it's the 4 corners that we want to mark because as we work through the project, we are going to be increasing in the corner slots. So all you want to do is start from your first stitch marker over here and just count your stitches. And remember that this is the side that is 1 stitch longer than this side. So for me, I have 16 stitches here. So I counted over 16, and then I counted over 1, and that is where I placed my stitch marker. And then I counted 17 stitches for my shoulders, and then I counted 1, and then placed my stitch marker. Then I counted 31 stitches for my front panel, and then I counted 1, and I placed my stitch marker. And I did the same thing for the other shoulder, count 17 or whatever your number is. And then I counted over 1 and placed my stitch marker. And then I counted 15 for the back panel. Make sure you count this and just make sure that you have all of the correct stitches. And by the way, I've placed all of my stitch markers into the back bumps of my chain because that is where I'm going to be working into on the first row, and that'll give us a cleaner look. So place your stitch markers into the back bumps. Okay, the hard part is out of the way. We figured out our math, and now the rest of this will be a lot easier and we can just work on our project now. To begin, you want to chain 4. We're going to be using double crochets for our stitches, and double crochets are 3 stitches high. So we chained 4 because this is going to be our first double crochet, and then it's a chain 1. It might be helpful for you to use a stitch marker and mark the 3rd chain. So that is the 2nd chain from your hook, and that is going to be the top of our first double crochet. Now where our stitch marker is, this is our very first stitch right here where we have our double crochet. We're going to skip the next stitch and then make a double crochet in the next one. To make a double crochet, yarn over. We need to put an extra loop on our hook. Insert into the stitch. Yarn over. Pull up 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2. You should have 2 loops remaining, yarn over, pull through 2. And then we are just going to chain 1, just like that. And that is our very first little mesh. So this is our mesh stitch, which we are going to repeat through most of our project. So we're going to be working this mesh stitch all the way around, but when we get into the corners, that's where it's a little bit different. So let's start our repeating pattern. Skip 1 chain, and then double crochet into the next chain. Chain 1. And that is it. That is the repeating pattern. Let's go through it a few more times together. So skip the next stitch and then double crochet into the next one. Chain 1. Skip the next stitch, double crochet into the next one. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet into the next one. chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet into the next one. It can be a little finicky to work into the chain. It gets much easier on round 2. Chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, chain 1. Okay, at this point, you should have 1 stitch before your stitch marker. So if you don't have 1 stitch, maybe count your math, make sure everything is correct. But we are going to skip a stitch, and now we're going to start our first increase. All we do is place a double crochet into that stitch, and then we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to insert another double crochet into that same stitch, and this is called increasing. And there we go. That is our little increase. So that is what we are going to be doing in all of our corners. And what you can do to help you recognize when you get back around to these corners on the next round, take your stitch marker out and then place it into that chain 1 space. Now we will chain 1, and we are just going to keep repeating our pattern where we skip the next stitch and double crochet into the next one. So keep repeating the same thing across your shoulder here. Okay, I've made it to my next corner. So again, you should always have 1 stitch free before you get to the corner. And I'm just going to place my double crochet in it. Chain 1. And then place another double crochet into the corner. And then take your stitch marker out and place it into the chain 1. Now repeat exactly what we have been doing the whole way around. Just do regular meshes in every stitch, and then when you get to the corners, you will place a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet into each of those to increase. Once you reach the end of this row, you should have 1 chain remaining. So that is the first chain that we put our stitch marker in. And we are just going to slip stitch to the top of our chain 3. That's our first double crochet to close the round. So insert your hook into that chain, and then we are just going to create a slip stitch to close it, just like that. And our round 1 is complete. We can go ahead and remove the markers from that first and last stitch on the chain. We don't need those anymore. For round 2, we are going to be doing the same thing for the rest of the rows. So I'm going to show you what to do for round 2. And then you will work this until it reaches about the end of your armpits. To start each round, we are going to chain 4. And remember, that is our first double crochet plus a chain 1. And if you need to, you can go ahead and mark your 3rd chain with a stitch marker so that you know exactly where the top of your double crochet is. Then we are going to turn our work. And we're just going to do pretty much the same thing we did on the first row. So we're going to skip a chain, and then we're going to create a double crochet, chain 1, skip a chain, double crochet into the next, chain 1. So we're going to repeat this until we get to our corners. Okay, I'm at my first corner, so I am going to place a double crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet to increase this corner. So insert a double crochet, and we're going to be working through the middle of it. right through here, right under our chain. Create a double crochet, chain 1, and then you can remove this stitch marker to get it out of the way, and then I usually just place it right back onto the chain, and then place another double crochet. Just like this. I'm going to work the same pattern, so chain 1, and make sure, so in our little increased cluster here, we have our double crochet, and then we have a chain 1, and then we have a double crochet. So you just want to work on top of the next double crochet because we're going to skip a chain. So just look at your stitches and make sure you didn't work into the corner again. So just look at where your corner is, skip a chain, and then you're gonna work into that next double crochet, just like that. Okay, we're coming up to the next corner, so I'm gonna show you one more time how to do that. So I just did a double crochet and I chained 1. We're gonna skip the stitch right there, and then we are going to increase into that space. Chain 1, and then place 1 more double crochet. Inside of it, take your stitch marker out, and you can just put your stitch marker back into the chain 1. And then we chain 1, skip a stitch, and then work into the next stitch. Okay, when you get to the end of round 2, I just created a double crochet into the last spot, and then I chained 1. And now I'm going to slip stitch to our chain 3. Just like that. And now you just repeat round 2 for however many rounds you need until you reach the bottom of your armpit. And I definitely advise trying this on every few rounds just to make sure that you like how it's laying on you. Okay, I have completed the body of my shrug. I did 11 rows in total. So I'm gonna flip this over so I can continue where I left off here. We're gonna be working the next row a little bit differently. So on this row, we're gonna be working around and creating the armholes for our shrug. I personally don't want to add any more length to my shrug, so what I'm going to be doing on this row is I'm going to be creating single crochets into every stitch. That also includes our chain 1s. So we're going to do single crochets starting going down here until we get to our first corner. So to begin, let's chain 1. And I'm going to turn. In the first chain here, I'm going to create a single crochet. To make a single crochet, just insert it right into the stitch, yarn over, pull up 2 loops, yarn over, and pull through both loops. And then go ahead and mark your first single crochet so that we know where our round started. And so we're just going to continue to create single crochets in every stitch here until we get to our first corner. The last stitch that I'm doing a single crochet in is the chain 1 that's right before our corner here. And then I'm going to go ahead and just remove this stitch marker. We are treating our corner as just 1 stitch, so just go ahead and go through the stitch like you were before and just create a single crochet. So we're going to be creating a chain, and we're gonna chain, and then we are going to go over to our other corner. So these stitches here and the chain that we're creating, that's going to be our armhole. So on this part, you're gonna have to do some experimenting by creating some chains, and then you wanna keep trying on your top and see how it feels on your arm, depending on how loose or tight you want your arm to be. Just keep your chain an odd number. For my first experiment here, I'm chaining 7, And then what you want to do is go to the other corner. I'm just inserting into that and then creating my single crochet. And now I'm going to try this on and see how it fits. I ended up chaining 13 for my sleeve. You also may want to put a stitch marker in the middle of your chain because that is where we are going to be connecting the sleeve. That way the seam is on the bottom of our arm. I just want to pop in here real quick to go over a few things before we start the sleeve. So I just ended up testing one of my sleeves and my chain was definitely too small. So my chain now is 17. So for your stitch marker that's in the middle of your chain, I can't remember if I told you to stitch mark the back bump, but as I was testing, the chain got really twisted up and it just made it kind of awkward. So normally I would work into the back bump, but on this, I'm going to work into the top of the chain. So go ahead and put your stitch marker in the top. It just makes it a little bit easier. If you're a beginner, I'm just going to show you a few stitch marker spots that might be helpful for you to help identify stitches. So if you mark the single crochets that you made into your increase spot, that can definitely be helpful for you. So right before your chain, those 2 single crochets there. Another stitch marker that might help you is when we go to work around the sleeve here, as we work down the chain, we're going to have our increase spot here. It may be helpful for you to mark the first double crochet after your increase spot because it can be a little confusing. So when you're looking at this, here's my increase spot. This right here, this is my double crochet that's in the increase. And then there's a chain one. So this next double crochet, that's going to be the next stitch that we do end up going into. It might be helpful for you to mark that. And same thing on the other side, it may be helpful for you to mark it. So of course, that's completely optional. I just thought that might really help any of you that are a beginner. And hey, even if you're not a beginner, don't be afraid to use stitch markers. I use them all the time. I overuse them because I just really like to make sure that I'm in the right spots. And also, if you have ADHD like I do, it's just helpful because, you know, sometimes you're not paying attention. Now we're just going to continue on to the front of the shrug and we're going to do the same thing we did on the back. So you're going to single crochet in every stitch until you get to the sleeve corner again. I've made it to my next corner, so I'm going to go ahead and remove my stitch marker. And I'm going to single crochet into that corner there. And now I'm going to chain 13. After you've created your chain length, you're going to find the other corner, and I'm just going to remove my stitch marker. And I'm going to create my single crochet into that corner. Now I'm going to continue on and do the same thing that I did on the other side. So identify where the next stitch is. Here's my chain. And just create single crochets all the way down until you reach your stitch marker where you started. And then I will show you how to close the round. Okay, I've reached the end of the round. Make sure you don't put a stitch into the slip stitch right here. So if you can see, here was my last double crochet and then my last chain one. This next stitch here, this is your slip stitch, so you want to ignore that stitch. So we are going to slip stitch to our stitch marker here, our first single crochet. And now our round is complete. I'm going to chain one and just bring this up. What I would recommend to do now is to try your piece on one more time. Make sure this all fits you really nicely. I will insert a clip here of how it's looking on me. And then whenever you're happy with that, we will begin the sleeves. Another tip before you start the sleeves, I'm about to go to the next clip where I tell you to fasten off right here. But If you have an extra skein of yarn that you're already using for this project, or maybe you want to use a different color anyways for your arms, you could go ahead and for the first sleeve, you could leave this attached and then just attach your sleeve with the other skein because we're going to be detaching anyways. So I know me personally, I'm going to leave mine attached. That way, if I have to redo my sleeves again, I can just easily, undo what I did, undo the last round with the chains, and then I can adjust the length of them. If you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. You can fasten off, start your sleeves, whatever works for you. Now we're going to start our sleeves. So go ahead and create a slip knot with your yarn. Okay, we're going to go to the chain that we created and into the middle stitch that we marked. Insert your hook into that stitch. And then create a slip knot. I'm going to begin with a chain 4, and that counts as our first double crochet and our chain 1. So if you're keeping track, you'll mark the third chain. We skip the next chain, and in the following chain, we're going to insert our double crochet. We're just continuing to do our mesh stitch, just like we've done on the rest of the pattern. But I am gonna take you through this first row though, because I know that the stitches can be a little bit tricky right here to know which ones to work into. So chain 1. And let's continue to make our mesh stitch across the chain by skipping a stitch and then double crocheting into the next one and then chaining 1. Okay, so I just put my double crochet in the last chain there. The next spot I'm going into is, if you look at your piece here, you'll see here I have my rows where I was increasing at the shoulders. That's where we're going to insert our next double crochet into that chain space, or into that increase space. And then chain 1. And then I had walked you through marking the next stitch that we're going to be going into, because it does look a little confusing here, because this stitch here is the double crochet that is in our increase space, and then there is a chain 1, and then this is our next double crochet. So place your next double crochet into there, and then chain 1. After this, going around here is pretty easy. We're just doing the exact same thing that we have done the whole pattern. We are putting double crochets on top of the previous double crochets and chaining 1 between each one. And then when we get back over here, I will help clarify where to go into. Okay, now I'm back to where my last double crochet is. So I'm just going to put a double crochet into that spot, chain 1, and then just like the other side, you can see that we have our increases going down here. That was from our corner pieces of our shoulders. And we'll again just put a double crochet into that spot. When we get to our next marker, we are going to skip that one. And we're going to crochet into the next chain. This part can be a little tricky with your chain. Just try your best to shove your hook in here. We're gonna do just the same thing we did on the other side, where we do a double crochet, chain 1. Okay, I now have 1 chain remaining between the last stitch I made and the first stitch. If your count is off for any reason, by the way, and you don't have a free chain space, you can honestly just ignore that if you need to. Now that I'm back at the beginning though, I'm going to close my row the same way that I have through the pattern by slip stitching to the top of that chain 3. And then you will start your rows the same exact way by chaining 4 and turning your work. For row 2 and 3, we are just going to create a regular mesh stitch going around the sleeve right here. And then on round 4, I will show you how to do an increase. Okay, on round 4, I'm going to increase because for me, my shoulder is a little tight. You can totally skip this if I would try this on and see how this is fitting around your shoulder. But if you would like to increase, I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to just start just as normal by chaining 4, and then we're going to turn. I'm going to increase on my first stitch, so I'm going to add another double crochet into that first stitch, and then a chain 1. When it comes to increasing on the sleeves, it's really up to you. It depends on how much you want to increase. So for me, I just want to do a pretty minor increase. So I'm going to increase every 4 stitches. The best advice I can give for this is to just make sure that you're placing your increases somewhat evenly around the sleeve the best that you can. So you could just count how many stitches you have and then figure out where you want to place your increases around it. If you want to do a really drastic increase, you could increase every stitch, or you could increase every other stitch. Obviously, the more increases you put into it, the more drastic it's going to flare out. And one other thing I recommend, so I'm going to be going, like I said, every 4 stitches. So I'm going to go 4 stitches, and then in the 5th stitch, I'm going to do an increase. When I get to the end here, if I don't exactly have like the same amount of number between my last increase and the first one, like let's say I only have like 3 stitches left, that's totally fine. So like I said, you just want to try to just space them out the best that you can with how many stitches you have, because you can't always evenly place them depending on how many stitches you have. So I will just show you an example real quick of how I'm doing mine. So I'm just continuing as normal. I'm going to skip the next stitch and then just do the normal mesh stitch that we've been doing. Okay, I just completed 4 of my mesh stitches. So in the next stitch, I'm going to increase by placing a double crochet into that stitch, just like normal, chain 1, and then place another double crochet into that same stitch, and then chain 1, and then I just continue on as normal. I'm going to do another 4 stitches, and then I'm going to increase. And I'm just going to continue that pattern for round 4. After you're done with round 4, I do round 5 through 14 as a normal mesh stitch, and then I increase on round 15. And again, this is very much up to personal preference, how you would like to do your sleeve. You could do the entire sleeve without increasing at all, or you could have a really drastic increase. But for me personally, I definitely want like most of my arm here to just be kind of straight and not increasing. And then when I get down here is when I start to do my increasing. So you can really just kind of choose your own adventure and do your sleeve how you would like at this point. But I will show you again how I do my increases at round 15. I might be jumping around in time here because I realized I forgot to explain something on the sleeves. So for the sleeve where I'm at right now, on the last row, I had done an increase, which you can see right here. We're going to be working on top of the increase a little bit differently than we did in the corners of the top here. So we're not going to be going into the space like this. So when you have an increase row on the sleeves right below, what you're going to do is just treat each one as a stitch. So I'm going to just create my stitches right on top of that. So just like this, instead of working into the space like we did over here. I am now at round 15, and for me, this is going to be the last round that I increase my sleeves on. I just want a really slight flare on my sleeves. So I'm going to show you the increase that I do on this round, I'm going to again increase in the first stitch, so I'm going to insert another double crochet into this stitch and then chain 1. I'm going to again do another gradual increase. I'm going to spread this one out even more. Now I'm going to do 7 stitches and then increase on the 8th stitch. So you'll just do 7 stitches as normal. On the 8th stitch, I'm going to increase. And that is the pattern that I'm going to continue on this round. And I know for me, I'm going to do another 7 stitches and then increase on the 8th. And then to the next increase, I only have 6 stitches. But again, that's totally fine if it's not exactly perfect, as long as you try to keep them spaced out if you're trying to do it this way. And then just as a reminder, if you want to do a drastic increase, then you maybe want to increase every other stitch, or you might want to increase every stitch if you want it to be really dramatic. It really depends, like I said, on what you want to do for your sleeve. So it's completely up to your own style and how you want to do it. But at least you know how to increase gradually or dramatically. So you will just go ahead and continue this and finish your sleeve. So for me, what I'm going to do is finish my increasing on this round, and then I'm going to continue to just do regular mesh stitch around with no increasing. And for my sleeve, it is 32 rounds in total. When your piece is complete, I just want to show you all how to weave in your ends through a stitch like this, because it can be kind of tricky. So after I was done with my row, I chained 1 and cut my yarn. And then I'm just going to kind of take my needle and weave it kind of through my stitches like this. And I just take it very randomly through in different directions. And I'm kind of trying to just blend it in with the stitches that are already here. Sometimes if I want to extra secure it, I will grab it, I'll put my needle around another stitch and pull through, and then I will grab the end here because I want to form a loop, and then I'm going to take my needle through that loop and pull tightly just to make another knot. And then I just do the same thing. I'm just going to randomly take it through the stitches in different directions, pulling gently. I'm not trying to pull too hard or anything. Okay, after I've weaved it through a few, I'm just going to cut it. Our cute shrug is all complete. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel and like this video. I'll see you all next time. Bye!